You're on your way to pick up some items from storage, but then you find out it's all gone. Everyone's worst nightmare is losing all of the loot you've worked so hard for on collecting. And apparently, some Starfield players have had exactly that happen to them. But how can this happen? A good question, and mixed signals from both PC and Xbox players can be found on Reddit, with some presented as fact whilst others seem to be guesswork. I recently made a video on top 10 tips for Starfield as part of my beginner's guide and included a tip on where to store your loot, or more specifically, the largest basement. So when a viewer of the video shared a comment saying that containers there will reset every 168 hours universal time, I was both surprised and confused as I hadn't noticed this myself, considering the chance that I somehow missed it, as it then should have occurred to me as well. I decided to check this out further and see if this reset is an intended or default event of the game at certain intervals. Let me know in the comments if you have had this happen to you, and if you have noticed under what circumstances. Because maybe we can just pull enough data on this to find and share a more detailed explanation. And as long as you're in the comments anyways, consider leaving a like or hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Now, if you've been following what's going on the screen, you will have noticed I'm testing to see if items have disappeared after a certain amount of time has passed. I have put several different items in 7 separate containers, including the safe in your room at the lodge as a reference point, since people seem to indicate this would be the only safe location, pun intended. As you can see, after 168 hours universal time have passed, all items are still accounted for. Now the next check is a minimum of 168 hours local time, just to be sure these two notations haven't gotten mixed up. But after 169 local hours, everything was still here. At this point it seemed like a good idea to also allow for some margin. So I decided to take it up to 240 hours local or 500 hours universal time to see if I wasn't trying to be too precise about it. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying or trying to prove that people who did experience items disappearing are mistaken or that it didn't happen, but we can conclude now that time passing in and on itself is not the trigger, because in the end it turns out that after 500 hours universal time has passed, nothing changed. But then what is causing these items to disappear? Aside from a certain amount of time passing, there are several other theories that can be found, and these are the most common ones. Travel in your ship from A to B between locations you have visited before, landing on planets you haven't been before, loading into different areas of New Atlantis itself, and doing graph jumps. Now, also noteworthy, the difference between playing the game on PC or Xbox is brought up as a possibility, but after reading several posts it seems to make no large difference. A lot of the posts also seem to include the assumption that some containers in the basement are linked to the crafting tables, which is definitely not the case. So just as a side note, so far the best way to have resources available when crafting or doing research is to select the option "Take all resources from a container." So from here on I thought, as long as I'm working on it already, why not go the few extra miles and check out some other possible scenarios. So I tested out these different ways of traveling to see if any of them would be the cause. A first conclusion would be that all containers in the basement are safe, and that time passing or traveling do not cause these to be wiped. As I'm making this video, it seems more like a bug randomly occurring for a select group of players and containers, rather than the reset being a standard intended part of the game. There is also the possibility that, since most people were talking about this issue some months ago, it has been patched by Bethesda in the meantime. Ultimately, I have 200 days logged for my main character and no items have disappeared for me from containers in this time period. Now, I would love to know from those who have had items disappear if loading a save game would give you your items back. Let me know in the comments. Now, me testing this, I'm just one person, so again, as long as we can consolidate as much info on this as possible, we might be able to pinpoint the exact cause and take away any doubt on where to store your items without the risk of losing them. If you want to replicate my test, then I have included the steps in the description below. If you happen to have a different experience, be sure to let me know so I can update this video at a later time. For now, thanks for watching and see you next time.